So welcome back. This is Fredrik from Tektronix. I'm going to show you two interesting things here today. I'm going to talk a little bit about our new exciting hardware and also about our new software for pulses. So first of all, if you look at this very quickly, you will see that I'm running texting of UPC. You can see that the frequency 1 gigahertz and the span is 40, and that's normal for the USB connector one. So this gun, I'm going to play you a little bit trick here. So I put this one to 5 gig, and I'm going to first go into 800 megahertz. So we actually launched a model today that supports up to 800 megahertz of modulation bandwidth. On this, what I'm playing out now is a chirp radar. And I injected some problems with the chirp radar. I'm going to walk you through a little bit about this, and meanwhile I'm going to try to publish here on the video some of the key features regarding the hardware. So for those of you familiar with Signal UPC, this should not be that much excitement. For those of you who have the pulse option today, you're going to like some of the features I'm going to show you here. So let's start by looking at this. We go into DPX. We can see that there's something here. We need to tweak this a little bit as usual. So I go into the settings, I go into the traces, I go into the bitmap trace, and I go for infinite. And then probably we can turn this one off just to see. So from this one, it's really hard to tell, but I'm going to tweak this a little bit. You can see that there's kind of a line over here. And we're going to make the DPX work as good as it can, as fast as it can, to determine what this is. So one thing if you go to preferences, you can have the parameter readout, and this is the POI. At 1 megahertz resolution bandwidth, in this case the POI is 5.4. I can go to 10 megahertz to see if it's a little bit faster. It should be. And suddenly we have a POI of 628.2 nanoseconds. So second thing I do in this one is this is a beta software and beta hardware, is tweak this. So first of all, we go to this one. So first of all, what I'd like to do is reduce the maximum. The maximum is normally much, much less. And if I go into this picture, you will start to see something over here. Then I'm going to move the minimum. I'm going to move the minimum up a little bit until I get something, and you will see it soon. Moving out, and here you go. And then there's the curve. And I can change the curve a little bit to make this a little bit more visible. And here you can see that from time to time I have this trace and this trace. This is as a frequency. So the chirp on some of the pulses are a little bit slower. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to select some new displays we have here in the pulsed RF. We have a cumulative histogram. I'm going to show this as a start just to see what's going on. And there's no pulses found, of course, because we need to show the navigator view. Navigator view is a great tool for you to control the length and where you want to do the analysis. So we put this at 100 microseconds. Second thing we need to do is, of course, we need to kind of trigger this one. So I go to the trigger menu. And we trigger this one. We should have no auto. We triggered, and event should be minus 15 or something. And we trigger. So now we capture this one. We have 100 microseconds. Maybe we should a little bit longer. Let's do 1 millisecond here. So we have some pulses. And as you can see, this is a new feature we have. This is actually updating, sweep by sweep. So it's a more statistical view of how a radar behavior. We have customers doing vibration test and climate chamber test, and they want to see if there's anything happening over a long time. So this is just, adding pulses over time. Other thing you can do here is there's the bin here. When you can go to the max one, the top one, there's a little arrow here indicating the one with the most bin. In this bin, if you go to the histogram table, like this, and bin number 8, this one, and this is the power level. Bin 92, I'm sorry. If I can do that, so many bins here, so we can stop this one. So bin number 92 is the one with the most here, 92. So that's a minus 11.014 to a minus 11.012. This is the one. Oh, it's actually this one now, 90. So, but in this case, there's something wrong with the chirp. So instead of selecting this, I go to frequency deviation, and I press run, and you suddenly see that there's a kind of a scale. It's like 98 megahertz. So there's something odd here. And try to determine this one. I can clear this one again and see. I mean, it should be kind of a. You see, it's auto-scaling all the time. In this case, I hide a pulse inside here, which has a much less chirp in it. I think one is 500 and one is 400, or 600 and 500. We will measure that later. So this is the first step of doing that. And you can see that we already calculated about 400 or 500 pulses. And you can see that there is some pulses here and some pulses here. And you can see the bin. And if you go to the table again, you can see that the start for 470 and the top one is like 570. So running this, a few hours to give you a good example if there's something wrong with the chirp. But you can also look at other tables. So I will add a table here, which is called pulsogram. It lets you kind of quick and dirty look at, the frequency pulses and the frequency versus time, start and stop. And this is really meant for when we implemented the fast frame, where you actually don't capture all the dead time between the pulses, when you actually capture only pulses. So that's a new display. The other display which I like and people are getting confused about is the pulse trace. If you look at the pulse trace here, it's kind of a neat feature. It actually tells you what pulse we're looking at by highlighting this area here in kind of red, and also where we do the measurement. So when people see this the first time, I do a relative measurement. So I don't start really at the pulse end, and I don't stop really at the pulse back, so to speak. I do a relative to get a little bit. But this is something that you can set up by yourself. So if you look at this pulse, and we have the pulse traces, there's also the possibility to do statistics as we do, statistics. We can have cumulative statistics, and we run it here. And all I'm going to do is add something to this one. I'm going to add the frequency deviation, where it is. Frequency deviation, add to this. And if I look at this one now, I can see the frequency deviation. If I look at this, I get actually the maximum is 517 and the minimum is 479. And you can see an absolute time slot for those one. And the peak to peak is roughly 100 megahertz, and this is what I expected. The average is 526 and the standard deviation is 13. But this is peak to peak because I have two different pulses. We go back here. So I close this one. I think we looked at that one. We close this one. We looked at that one. The second thing I do is open the pulse statistics, the standard ones. So we go for pulse and pulse table. Pulse table is a little bit different. I need to set this up one more time to get the frequency deviation. And now we can do a little bit longer time. So I stop this one. I put the time here to 5 milliseconds. It's a longer time at 800 megahertz, and I do a single shot. I take a single shot and it's analyzing, and will give you the frequency deviation by pulse by pulse. And here we are, and we can see that we have one of those here. This is a shorter 580, and we can go down here, and there's probably one 486 here. So there's two of them pulses that is a little bit off in the chirp, and we can identify them. We can also, as soon as we record it, we can go back and look at them, and we can look at them in like a spectrum overview, and we just press replay, and we have the pulses there. All I need to do is change this a little bit, the resolution, because they're really short. And here you can maximize this one, and you can play this up and down just to see where we are, to determine what pulse it is. So. But mostly it's people doing the thing in the pulse table. I think it's a great improvement to a lot of our software, that you can do both long term and short time, and you can run and stop, and you can do whatever you want. Let's put this back to 200 microseconds and just press run, continuous. We have this one, and we have a kind of 2 pulses at least. Maybe I can do 3 pulses. 3 pulses. We see the deviation here for the frequency table, and we have this spectrum over here. So the other thing that is really new and cool is the possibility to record. If I press this button here, I can tell this to stream to the RAID, which is an option, and acquisition bandwidth 800, and I can just start recording. There's different ways of doing that. As I'm triggering now, I will record on trigger, and I press start, record. And here I can set up, I just place 10 milliseconds, let's say 50 milliseconds, and I press start, and I record it. And the option here is for 800 megahertz is up to 2 hours. I hope you enjoyed this very, very short introduction to their new hardware and some updates on the software. If you have any questions, please contact me, and hope to see you soon again. And I'm sorry, there are so many videos on queue. I hope I can do them in the next few weeks. Thanks.